Welcome to another episode of Driving with Sean. I'm Sean, I'm driving, and we're going to talk about tech. So, I want to talk about some AI stuff that I have done recently and that I'm rolling out to a couple of clients. So, the first thing is just helping customers build skills. And let's talk about a skill. If you don't know what a skill is in sort of any of the modern AI tools, a skill is basically a very complicated prompt that has a range of instructions that can do a lot more than just prompt in a window. So in other words, instead of like one mega prompt, remember those? Instead of like one mega prompt, you actually have a skill that can connect to files and folders, can connect to services like your mailbox, your calendar, etc. So one of the skills I've built and that I use on a daily basis is a chief of staff skill, and I've rolled this out to order to customers as well. What the chief of staff skill does for me is it runs through pretty much everything in my life, right? Started in the morning, / chief of staff, and I go start my day. And it starts my day, exactly. So it checks my mailbox first for like any emails that have come in. It applies a bit of weight to emails. So in other words, if there's an email and somebody say followed up on that email a few days later, it tries to escalate that stuff to the top. It goes through Granola, which I use for note-taking in meetings. So all my meetings are transcribed. It runs through those. It looks for things that need to be done, things that need to be remembered, followed up, executed, handed off, blah, blah, blah. My chief of staff skill also has a list of everybody who works for me, what their roles are, and tries to assess through everything that it collects who to hand off what to. It goes through our ticket support system so that it kind of pulls all our tickets in, and I can see what jobs are open, what's being done, what's being reported. It connects to my calendar, checks any meetings I have for the day. It basically collects everything from everywhere and then presents it to me neatly. So one of the issues I had with the chief of staff skill is presenting it inside Claude is a bit of a problem, because now it's just a little chat window that sits in there. You can't really engage with the data and the content as much as I'd like. And so what I started doing is actually getting to output to a note system. So now I use Bare Notes, which is pretty cool. I've recently switched from Obsidian. And so what I get it to do is output the data from that the chief of staff runs, output that to Bare Notes. And we prioritize everything, we organize everything into priority categories. So we have priority 1, P1, P2, and P3. They come with nice big red, orange, and green dots. And anything that's like super urgent, so in other words, if a supplier or a customer's emailed me and there's any kind of financial issues or payment issues or a credit card somewhere's bounced, those kind of things go into P1. It can kind of quite accurately decide what's important and creates those P1 items. Inside Bare Notes, it creates it as a task list. So it is like a to-do item with a little tick box. And then has P2, which is kind of, you need to get to these things, but they're not like critical. And then P3 is more of like you need to keep your eye on these things. And so that's quite useful for me. I just have this Bare Note. It overwrites the same Bare Note every day and sort of appends, doesn't just rewrite the whole note. It appends new items, so old items stay on there, compares the two, and so on. So that's pinned in Bare Notes. It's easy to keep open on my computer and just kind of go, okay, what are the things I should be doing right now to kind of move my day along, what emails need attention, etc. As I mark things off in Bare Notes, I add footnotes. So I'll mark an item as done, I'll add a footnote, and the footnote I'll give more context for what was done, like how I solved it, what I did, what the resolution was, what the follow-up is, even instructions for Claude. So the next time that I run my chief of staff skill, which might be mid-afternoon, might be at the end of the day, it will read through all of those things, all of those footnotes, and append that to its memory. My chief of staff skill has quite a comprehensive memory system. So there's obviously just like a memory.md file. They're all markdown files. There's a memory.md file. There's an assignments.md file, so I can remember who was assigned what and where. There's a tasks.md, which is basically the to-do list, and a couple of other files that it's built in there to be able to remember everything that we're working on. In addition to that, what I do in that sort of co-work chat with that chief of staff. Because remember, if you use something like Opus 4.8, so I run Opus 4.8 with the 1 million context window, that chief of staff skill runs, all that stuff lives right there. It outputs into bare notes. It's just an easy way for me to see what needs to be done. But as I go through my day, I drop a lot of screenshots into that co-work task. So in other words, stuff like WhatsApps, any kind of messaging or any kind of input that I get from people that Claude can't yet connect to and can't comfortably pull their data in. So Teams chats, Slack chats, WhatsApp, Telegram, etc., etc., etc. I'll screenshot that stuff and I will just drop that wholesale into the Claude co-work chat thingy task. It's a task, co-work task. Drop it in there, and it remembers all of that in context as well. So if you use the same co-work task for multiple days, what ends up happening is you benefit from that context window. That's a plus. It's an absolute bonus. It's also quite a downside because it ends up chowing a fair amount of your tokens. So what I try and do is sort of compress that chat every now and again, maybe once a week. Sometimes on a Monday morning, I'll just create a whole new task. If Claude drop a new model, like they dropped Fable last night, I will try and take Fable and implement Fable in there, like max most thinking. I know it's token heavy, but I want the best result out of that thing. There are other things in Claude and other things I do with AI where I can use cheaper models, but at that point I want the most comprehensive, most accurate, deepest thinking possible model to run through everything I've got and give me the most accurate, comprehensive, these are the things you should be focusing on and doing today kind of thing. So that's how I manage my chief of staff. As I said, I've created a couple of versions of this. If you want a copy of it, just send me a DM on Twitter. I will happily share it with you. I have anonymized it, so I can give it to you, and then there's an instruction and like a setup you can run, and it'll just kind of set up your chief of staff for you. But it's quite comprehensive. It's there. Just reach out to me, and I'm happy to share it with you.